Bombing targets in Battlefield 6 can be pretty tedious. The bombs can end up feeling pretty underwhelming, and there is basically no room for error when you're aiming, and if you're even slightly off, then you are going to end up scoring no damage on them. In today's video, I'll explain how to be a useful asset to your teammates on the ground, and I'll also explain how you get those high kill games that you see all your favourite YouTubers getting. Right, so when it comes to bombing ground targets, the first thing that you need to do is have the air clear. Now, if you don't know how to take out enemy jets and achieve air superiority, then I highly suggest you go and check my first two guides after this video, where in those two guides I'll also be covering my settings and just overall how to survive in jets. And you've got to be able to achieve air superiority first before you do anything in this game. Another thing, for controller players, I plan on making a separate video to just discuss controller settings and controls for the jets. I'm still not happy with my current setup compared to where I was with the helicopters, so just keep an eye out for that. But otherwise, the tips in this video will still help you out regardless of what controls you're flying on. So let's get into my first tip. Do not use the bombing camera. It is not worth using in this game. When you use the bombing camera in Battlefield 6, it tries to auto-level your jet, which makes aiming with it so obnoxious, and it throws off a lot of muscle memory, especially if you've been flying on Battlefield 4, where the bombing cameras and all that, they didn't do anything to your jet. It let you keep control. So don't bother with it, because it's just a waste of your time. Now let's get on to how to practice bombing, because this is something you'll want to be doing a lot if you want to get the hang of these things. Head over to Portal and put in the code you see on screen, and then use the Portal gadget that you'll be spawned in with to turn on all of the tanks, infantry fighting vehicles and mobile AA, and then the infantry squad. Now you can enable movement if you want. If you're just starting out, maybe keep them stationary first and get used to hitting a stationary target before you then try and hit a moving target, and then go into the jet you want to practice with. Now, for the attack jet, the routine is fairly simple. I like to open up with an AGM, then I like to dive onto them with my cannon rounds, and then finish off with a bomb. Now when you're bombing, I like to use my gun bullets as like a lead indicator as to where to drop my bomb. And generally speaking, if you're dive bombing well, you won't need to really aim with the bombs. You can just equip them, drop them, and then pull up. As you're pulling up, the bombs will most likely hit. Now another thing people forget to exploit is that you can use the free look camera to look back and lock your target with an AGM, and I tend to do this if they're still alive, and it just puts more pressure on them. And if you do this, 9 times out of 10 the vehicle you are strafing will be dead within one run. So to summarize, AGM, cannon rounds, bomb, AGM, and if you learn that routine, you will most likely kill every vehicle within one pass. The exception is if somebody knows what they're doing, a tank knows what they're doing, and obviously real players, they're going to be using countermeasures, but you can still effectively one-pass vehicles with this routine. Another thing to be cautious about when you're dive bombing is to just watch the angle that you're dive bombing from. If it's too shallow, then you risk being RPG'd by infantry as you're dive bombing. Generally speaking, the safest angle is 90 degrees. They can't look up 90 degrees physically. For other vehicles like the tank, you're probably safe with like a 70 degree angle, 60 degree angle, but again, just be cautious because anybody nearby, infantry wise, pull out an RPG, and if they're good enough with it, you are dead. Next we have the stealth jet. Now, the stealth jet is much more complicated than the attack jet, so if you haven't learned how to bomb with the attack jet yet, don't move on to this until you're comfortable with that at least. The reason why is because there is a slight delay in the bombs when you pull the trigger. This is stupid because the bomb bay door should open as soon as you select the weapon. I really don't know why DICE modeled it like this, but play with the cards you're dealt with. This is what you have to deal with. So when you're bombing, you need to account for that half a second delay from when you pull the trigger. Now once you've opened the bomb bay doors, the bombs will continue to drop as if they were in the attack jet. And this is why when you're bombing, generally speaking, you'll want to drop all 4 bombs onto a target, and your targets here are going to be vehicles. Because if you hit all 4 bombs, regardless of what vehicle it is, it will die in that pass. The problem with this is hitting all 4 bombs. It is very hard on a moving target, and for that reason I suggest in actual games, try to find targets that are stationary. if they aren't stationary, consider dropping maybe 1 or 2 bombs just to damage them a bit and then come back around for either a gun run or dropping more bombs on them, because you really do not want to be dropping 4 bombs to miss them all completely, because the resupply time takes ages, and on most maps you're going to be fighting for the air resupply, and on some maps like Suru Reef there just isn't one, so you really can't afford to be missing bombs if you're serious about getting high kill games in this thing. So the next thing I'd like to talk about is suppression of enemy air defenses. In other words, this is just how you deal with anti-air in Battlefield 6. Now, generally speaking, the only form of anti-air I like to deal with is the forms that end up being most detrimental to my survival in Battlefield 6. If they aren't causing a problem and they're more of just a minor inconvenience, don't bother killing them, because you don't want to accidentally trigger them to becoming more of a problem. Now, generally speaking, to deal with AA tanks, which is going to be your main threat, make sure you're managing your flares, obviously, and make sure you sneak up onto them below radar, because your biggest tool as an attack jet is the element of surprise. Now, most of the times, if they're just using normal lock-on missiles, I probably won't even bother them, because that's not a big of a deal to me. If they are using aim-guided missiles, you absolutely need to deal with them as soon as possible, because yeah, they're hard to aim with against jets, but eventually they will catch you off guard while you're in the middle of a dive, and they're gonna hit you eventually, and when they do, you're gonna get put into a spin, and that spin while you're diving will get you killed. So if they're using aim-guided launchers, you need to kill them. Not just for you, but for you other vehicles on your team as well. Because the other air vehicles, especially the helicopters, they are defenseless against that thing, and it's up to you as the jet, the big brother to the attack helicopter, to go deal with that little bastard putting a supply crate down and shooting endless streams of aim-guided missiles. It is up to you. Now, in terms of dealing with somebody who's using aim-guided missiles, it's kind of just the same premise as any other vehicle in this game. Try to catch them off guard, fire 1 AGM, and bait out their countermeasures first. Don't even fly down on them, bait out the countermeasures. Once they've used them, then you'll dive onto them again, fire your AGM, and it's the same procedure, but now they have no countermeasures, and if you do it correctly and you're good enough, you can easily kill them within one pass. Now, ironically, the stealth jet can actually perform better when it comes to taking out AA tanks in this game. The reason why is because you'll find AA tanks a lot of the time just standing still in the middle of a field. So what I like to do is when I'm in the stealth jet, and if you've got a wingman, I highly suggest you communicate here. Wingman baits out the tow missile. That forces the AA tank to stand still, because they will. No one's trying to guide missiles while they're moving. And then all you do is you just dive onto them. They're completely unaware. You drop your 4 bombs and say goodbye. They're dead. Okay, so when it comes to Stingers and Iglas, generally speaking, I wouldn't bother wasting your bombs on them, okay? They are a pressure tool. The lock-guided weapons take 0 skill to use, and all you have to do is flare them. So you shouldn't really worry about them, and the reason why is because they're just going to respawn 5 seconds later, and if anything, by killing them, 1, you are giving them chance to reposition, 2, you are giving them ammo back because they're going to respawn in 5 seconds, which is very different to the AA tank, which will take way longer. I think it's around a minute, maybe minute and 30 seconds to respawn. Very different to that. And then 3, it's just going to piss them off even more. And you don't want that, because the more you upset somebody in this game, the more they'll try and kill you. And that is absolutely not what you want. So prioritize getting actual kills and prioritize threats to your team. For example, tanks, air vehicles, and so on. If, however, you can't find anybody, and I personally do this a lot because it's really funny, it is kind of funny to just send a message by dropping a bomb on them. And all you need to do this is just look for where the missile trail is coming from and then just drop a bomb on them. Simple as that. And I only recommend doing this if you absolutely have no other target to find, because if you shoot a Stinger, that is giving away your location. Guaranteed to give away your location to a pilot. So, if you can't find any kills on the ground, take the free kill that's been given to you by the guy shooting the Stinger. Alright, so let's go over how to get gun kills now. Now, gun kills in this game is what I solely pretty much rely on to get infantry kills. Unless they're clustered up together, I generally like to avoid dropping bombs on infantry, because it just feels like a waste. Now, first off, I'd just like to express you shouldn't try to rely on getting infantry gun kills as your main source of kills in this game. You should always be going for vehicles whenever possible. But if you don't find any targets and the closest thing in front of you is infantry, by all means shoot at it. It's better than passing by and getting no kills. Now, when you shoot your gun as a jet in this game, if it doesn't hit the infantry, it creates this really stupid particle effect that makes aiming further shots much more difficult. So you really need to take your time when aiming against infantry in this game. Line up the shot and shoot small little bursts of bullets rather than holding the trigger non-stop, because otherwise if you hold the trigger non-stop, you're just going to get this massive smoke cloud in front of you and you're not going to be able to see anything afterwards. So really control your bursts here and take your time when aiming for infantry. And again, practice this in Portal, get used to it first. Generally speaking, it's easier to shoot infantry from a side-on angle rather than top-down, but the problem with doing this is you are very, very much asking for an RPG to the face. So try to score gun kills on infantry that don't know where you're coming from and don't see you. If they do see you and you see them lining up for a shot, it's not worth committing for it. Trust me, it really isn't for one kill. Now, in terms of finding infantry, I don't generally look for them in the first place. They are more of just, I'm checking an area when I'm diving, and I'm like, oh, okay, I see some soldiers there, I'll have a couple shots at them. Like I said before, they shouldn't be your main source of kills, so don't prioritize your time trying to find them. Unless they're in a really annoying spot and they're harassing you, don't waste your time trying to find infantry on the ground. Focus on the vehicles first. Infantry should always be your side objective. And now, the last chapter of this video is going to be covering naval combat, specifically bombing the boats and dealing with the boats. In this game, the new tow missile / AA missile that the boats have has the tendency to go through flares once it enters that lock-on state. If you do flare, it will work and it does everything it's supposed to. A lot of the time, however, it just goes completely through and hits you. When dealing with the boats, generally speaking, I wouldn't bother you trying to use the bombs on them. It just feels really weird. I don't know if it's because of the wave mechanics, but it just feels like my bombs, when they should hit, don't hit because of a wave. So generally speaking, don't waste your bombs on them. Stick to just using your guns, honestly. Use your guns and use your AGMs as well. I use one AGM to bait out the countermeasures, as usual. And then once they've used their countermeasures, you go in with the second AGM and then your guns, and you'll have them cleaned up within no time. Suru Reef, the new map in Season 4, has plenty of air cover, and you really should exploit that whenever possible. Another way to deal with the boats is to fly below radar, because as I said, that missile they have has the tendency to go through flares. It cannot lock onto you though if you're flying below radar. However, I don't really like doing this because once they figure out which direction you're coming from, and they will once you start shooting at them, they can still hit you by manually guiding the missile, and their machine gun, if they're using it, can still pilot snipe you. So just be aware when you're engaging a boat and try to stay on top of them, and don't let them catch you off guard either. They're glass cannons like every vehicle in this game, so anything can kill anything in this game, and all you need to do is just get to the boat first before it has a chance to fight back. And now I'd like to wrap this up with final notes. First one being, look, jets in this game are hard. I say this in every one of my guides. It is hard to fly jets, and it is even harder when the enemy team wants you dead. And if you're doing well in an average conquest match and you're getting loads of kills, people will try and focus you. They will want you dead. You'll have games where it's literally just non-stop lock-ons, people painting you as well, so now below radar is off the table. And by the way, if you are being painted, your options are very limited, because now you cannot fly below radar. You have no choice but to just try and get to some form of cover first, and then sneak back off to your base, which luckily on Suru Reef is actually very indeed much possible, but on different maps it can be very hard to do. Apart from that, I have nothing else to say on this guide. If you have any questions, leave them down below in the comments. I'll try and answer them as best as I can. Just remember, when you see people like Silk getting high kill games, you have to remember they have literally thousands of hours of experience. It's 10,000 hours to master a skill, supposedly. And pilots like Silk have been flying jets in Battlefield games since potentially Battlefield 3. Even further for some other pilots. You just have to remember, you can't learn this stuff overnight. It is hard to learn the decision making, the game sense, and just overall how to survive a Battlefield match. That takes time to learn, and you'll learn from your mistakes, and that's something you should definitely do when you are flying. Learn from your mistakes, learn from the best pilots' mistakes, and just overall be patient with yourself. This is one of the most vehicle hostile games in Battlefield history. The glass cannon approach, as I've said, horrible game design, and just overall learning how to fly on this game is probably as hard as it's gonna get in the Battlefield franchise. So if you like this guide, please consider checking out my channel. I have a playlist full of other vehicle guides that I think you'll like. And apart from that, I will see you all in the next video.